Hello, everyone. I am really glad that you're here. Welcome to our first episode in our four-part series, LGBTQIA+ Families Parenting with Pride. My name is Jennifer Solomon, and I am the Senior Manager of Parents and Family Support at Equality Florida, and I'll be your host for today's conversation. This series is a collaboration between the Brazelton Touchpoints Center and Equality Florida through our Parenting with Pride program. We'll drop some links in the chat so you can learn more about both organizations, along with additional resources and ways to stay connected. For those of you who may be new to our work, Equality Florida focuses on advancing equality through advocacy, education, and coalition building, working to ensure that no one experiences harassment or discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity. While our work is rooted in Florida, many of the challenges we're seeing there are not unique. They're showing up in communities across the country. That is why spaces like this matter so much, where we can come together, share knowledge, and support one another across state lines. I lead our Parenting with Pride program, supporting LGBTQ+ families and parents of LGBTQ+ youth in affirming their children and navigating challenges. I also serve on the human rights campaign's Parents for Transgender Equality Council, and I'm the founder and president of PFLAG Miami. I'm also a pediatric nurse by training, but most importantly, I am a parent of 4, and 3 of whom are part of the LGBTQ+ community. Like many of you, I come to this work both professionally and personally. Over the past year, I've connected with nearly 4,000 families, often in moments of uncertainty, and I've seen how powerful it is when families have access to accurate information and community support. I am really honored to be here and to talk about how we can support families and ensure that every young person, no matter where they live, has a chance to grow up safe, affirmed, and supported. I'm really proud to kick off this series, LGBTQIA+ Families Parenting with Pride, in partnership with the Brazelton Touchpoints Center. This series is centered on practical skills for advocacy, wellness, and change. Because we know that parenting in this moment requires a lot from us. Throughout this series, we're going to focus on real, usable tools, how to navigate difficult conversations, how to share your story with intention, how to care for yourself and your family, and how to find strength in collective action. And tonight's session really sets the foundation for all of that. Today's webinar, Pride in Every Word, Practical Communication Tools for Difficult Conversations with Joseph Zolapchuk, I'm gonna mess up his last name, but I'm gonna do my best, is all about how we show up in these moments that feel high stakes, whether that's with our kids, our extended family, schools, healthcare providers, or our broader communities. Because the truth is, how we communicate in those moments can shape outcomes, relationships, and even how supported our kids feel. But first, a little bit of information about today's conversation. Almost 400 of us have registered for today's webinar. Please feel free to tell us who you are, where you're from, and what you do in the chat. Thank you to our amazing interpreter, Maria Jose Gutierrez, joining us from Bogota, Colombia. She will be simultaneously translating our webinar into Spanish. Thank you, Maria Jose. To access the translation, click on the interpretation icon in your Zoom controls. Then select Spanish. To mute the English in the background, select Mute Original Audio. To turn closed captioning on, click on the Show Captions icon in your Zoom controls and select your speaking language. You can adjust the size of the subtitles. We welcome your questions and comments throughout today's conversation. Please use the chat feature if you have a comment to share or need help with a technical issue. Please put your questions for our guest in the Q&A box. Before we begin, I want to thank my colleagues at Equality Florida and the team at the Brazelton Touchpoints Center, Catherine Knowles O'Brien, Michael Accardi, Nelson Artavera, and Ashley Gaddis for their help in planning and producing this series. And now, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce today's guest, Joseph Zolabchuk. Hope I got that right this time, Joseph. Joseph is the executive director of the Yes Institute, with nearly 30 years of experience in nonprofit leadership and workforce development. He brings deep expertise in preventing science, mental health resilience, and well-being across diverse communities. A certified life coach, Joseph leads professional trainings across multiple industries and develops continued education programs for physicians, nurses, and therapists with a focus on client-centered care and best practices. Thank you again for being here, for showing up for your families, and for being part of this community. Let's sit back, relax, and get started. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Jennifer, thank you so much for that warm welcome. And hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. It's an honor to open up this dialogue and conversation with you all. As Jennifer mentioned, we really encourage you throughout today, please put questions or comments in the chat. My colleague Rodolfo is also on the call to make sure I don't miss any important questions or comments that come up. So I'd like to share a little bit about our work that we do. We are also based in South Florida. However, we've worked with organizations all across the country and in Latin America, specifically Mexico, Bogota, Colombia, Argentina. And our vision is a community in which all youth can develop as healthy individuals free of suicide, violence, and discrimination. And our mission is to prevent suicide and ensure the healthy development of all youth. And how we do that is through powerful communication tools, which we are going to share some of those with you tonight. And we also provide education on gender and orientation. As we know, this is a topic that over the last 3 decades has come more into public consciousness, and people still are learning. I've been in this field for 30 years. I learn new things every day. There's so much that we're learning about ourselves as human beings. So why did our work begin? Number one, we were able to participate in a study here in Florida schools, and we were able to survey about 8,000 middle and high school students on if they hear anti-bullying, anti-gay bullying comments or gender-related stereotypes as a part of their school day experience. And in a weekly basis or on a monthly basis, this is what we found in our study. So I wanted to mention that this not only impacts young people who might be questioning their orientation, it also can send a message to students who are not a part of the LGBT community that any type of thing related to this topic is something that is negative and is something that we can tease and bully one another with. So this is something that can impact all students in their school environment. And most importantly, our work began 30 years ago. We didn't have a lot of really robust studies, but now thanks to CDC Youth Risk Behavior Survey data, we have a clearer picture of the need for really looking at suicide prevention in this population. I can't tell you, there's not a week that goes by that we get a call from our local children's psychiatric unit about a client that might be a part of the LGBT community, or they're questioning, and they're discharging the family from being Baker Acted, the youth, and they're connecting that family to us because they need additional support. So we see very high numbers with this particular youth population. And another population that sometimes intersects with the population we're looking at tonight is folks that youth and young adults who might be on the autism spectrum or have some type of neurodivergence. So we've also started an initiative to help our families where their kids are on the autism spectrum and a part of the LGBT community. And this is very important because they often need a lot of extra additional support. So I just want to let you know these are the different types of focuses that we have as a part of our work. So I wanted to share with you an analogy. Let's say all of us on the call, we're at the bottom of this beautiful waterfall and we're all talking to one another. We're having a great time, admiring the view. And then all of a sudden, we see a child come tumbling down the waterfall and splash at the bottom. Now, what would we do? So probably a lot of us would panic, but somebody might, who's maybe a really good swimmer, they might jump in and grab the child and then bring them to shore. So the child is okay. There was an emergency and we rescued them. We saved the day, right? But 5 minutes later, two more children come tumbling down the waterfall. Now what do we do? Well, we need to jump in and get those kids. And then if this keeps going on, every 5 minutes, more and more kids start coming over the waterfall, hopefully somebody in our group might say, wait a minute, we need to send somebody up the waterfall to see who's throwing these kids over in the first place. So I present to you this analogy that's very much a part of our work is, yes, we know that there's a high mental health need and suicide risk with this population when there's not at least one supportive family member or kind teacher or friend group that they have. In all of the research I've seen around suicide prevention, if there's one supportive or affirming person in that young person's life, the chances of them going over the waterfall get greatly reduced. So sometimes we have to get involved in emergency services. However, a big part of our work is how do we have young people not even have the thought of contemplating taking their life in the first place and going over the edge. So in all of my training as a community psychologist, I'm very big on let's focus on prevention. Let's try to address the needs before it turns into a crisis. And one of the ways we humbly offer up as a part of the looking up the waterfall for solutions is our communication tools. We have a very bold saying at Yes Institute that there is no problem that communication cannot solve. And the trick is, how do we communicate when sometimes even in a family, there is so much disagreement? So just by raise of hands or putting in the chat, how many of you struggle, whether you have young children or teenagers or even, children in their 20s or even 30s or 40s, you notice that sometimes family communication is very challenging and you can sometimes end up in arguments and there can be hurt feelings. Whether it's about gender and orientation topics or not, family communication can be a challenge regardless. We have about 8 billion people all on planet Earth, and many of us are walking around feeling like our point of view is the right one. And if only people would listen to my idea and then change their mind, then everything can go fine in my family or my workplace or my community or my organization. But we notice, especially these days, if we turn on the news, we see nothing but argument, disagreement, conflict, and that's at the macrocosmic level. So let's bring it down to the every day-to-day level. So in this exploration, I'd like you to just take a look at your own family or maybe somebody that you've had difficulties with around disagreement in your life so that you can really start to try on these tools and see if you could get some insights in our session today. So on the left side of the screen, this is our default model that we're presented with as human beings just arriving here on planet Earth. We live our lives through a filter called "It's all about me and my concerns and what I want." And when we have disagreements with others who don't agree with us, typically we enter that conversation as I'm right and then they are wrong. And then they need to change their mind so they agree with me. And then sometimes when we're in disagreement, we have lots of stories, we have lots of evidence. Sometimes we resist people because we're just simply trying to retaliate, or we don't want to let them win the argument or the conversation. And that kind of interaction can damage our relatedness with other people. So I'm going to give you an example, and we're going to use this example throughout because we see this example a lot in our work, and many of you on this call might relate to this. So in this example, let's say that there's a young person and they've come out to their family, or that young person is afraid to come out. And what they're doing is they're making statements about maybe things that they've seen on the news because they're testing their parents' ability to see if what might be their reaction if they were to come out. How might that go? Many youth are very afraid of losing the love of their parents. Um, Probably all of us on our call can remember, disappointing our parents or having our parents not love us or being ashamed of us. That is a really heart-wrenching experience to go through. So typically, a lot of times when youth come out and the parents don't like that news or they disagree with it, or the parent in the family already has preconceived notions about who LGBTQ people are that might be negative, that can create a lot of disagreement and tension in the family. So, our model that we teach at Yes Institute is centering purpose, the why, the larger picture, not just what we disagree upon. We teach people that I have my opinions and another person has their opinions, and they may not always agree. I'll just do a quick check. Parents, do your teenagers or young adults have different ideas about what things should be and how they should go than you do? This is a very common human experience. Okay, I see a lot of thumbs up coming up in the chat. Yes. So, how on earth, when everybody feels that they're right and they want things a certain way, or they believe that what they believe, how can we possibly create a bridge of understanding and dialogue and relatedness? Well, I'm going to share a couple of tools with you. So first is getting present to the larger picture and understanding that only arguing about what we disagree about, it's going to just cause that conversation to really go no place. So if you can imagine like somebody, this my hand represents somebody's point of view or opinion, and they are very adamant about that, and then another person has another point of view, and then they start going back and forth like this. So one of two things often happens is the conversation gets really heated and then escalates, or they recognize, oh, we don't agree on this, so let's just never talk about this again. So escalation or silence is often what we're left with when we don't see a way to have a common ground and open up in conversation and dialogue. So I'm going to show you a visual. And I've seen this, a very similar experience with many of our families. And you might be able to relate to this through your own family, whatever you might be dealing with. So on the left, that's the parent. And on the right, that's the child. So the parent might say, you can't be gay or bisexual or trans. That goes against our faith tradition and our religious doctrines. That goes against our culture. That is wrong and bad and maybe even sinful. Now, the child, they have their own interpretation. As you know, kids do not just listen to their parents and go, okay, yes. They don't say that. They have their own mind. They often have their own views of things. So I'm going to call that a listening filter. Okay. Everyone has their own listening filter. So mom or dad or the parent or the guardian says that statement. And you know what the child hears? My mom won't love me. She doesn't accept me. They don't care about me. You see how mom said one thing, but the interpretation of the child gets translated through their filter. Does this make sense? Maybe you could give me a thumbs up, or you can put a question or comment in the chat. So then the child might say back, okay, thank you. This is making sense, right? So the child might make sense. you don't love me, you don't accept me, you don't support me, and I'm going to run away or I'm not going to talk to you. And then the parent is like, what? What is going on? And you could see this conversation dynamic play out in many ways. So in our communication courses, we have the family, the parents, and the young person or young adult, or even older adult. Sometimes people are coming out later in life in their 40s or 50s. Anybody coming out in a family that's not wanted, celebrated, or expected, there's going to be the possibility for communication tension. So here's what it looks like. We teach the youth and the parent that it doesn't hurt to listen and acknowledge the other person's point of view. Basically, what I'm saying is you can listen, and listening doesn't have to be about agreeing or disagreeing, but listening needs to happen. So that might look like we teach the young person, hey, young person, instead of just reacting with your thoughts about what mom said, can you hear what your mom actually said? And so our youth will go, well, my mom is worried that who I am is going against our family and our culture. And, how are we going to explain this to the rest of the family? And we say, yeah, that's what's going on for mom. Could you let her know you heard that from her point of view? And the child might struggle with it, but they go, okay, let me try it. All right, mom. So I told you this thing about myself, and now you have lots of worries and concerns. And now the parent is like, yeah, yes, I do. Okay, so you see how the gift of being able to listen is so powerful. So once the child can say something like that, then the tension starts to de-escalate. And then we teach the parents, they got to listen to their kid. The kid says, Mom, I didn't want to be gay, but I think I am. It's just who I am. I'm not attracted to the other, opposite sex in my high school or in my college. And then we got to teach the parents, what did your kids say? Despite them maybe wanting to be this way, that's who their attraction is. Can you let your kid, you heard that from them because that's their point of view. Mom and dad and the family and the grandparent, we have them see they can just listen. So this is one of many tools that we teach parents that can help de-escalate the conversation and then start to generate a purpose together. We even teach parents, and we work with some very traditional families, which really the parents are very not happy about this. And I will even say to them, hey, could you say this to your kid? This does really go against our religious beliefs and what we taught you as a family, and we love you. Can you just say that? And 99% of the time, parents will listen to us and then say that to their kid. Because remember, at the beginning, we talked about as long as the child knows that they are loved, even though this is difficult for the family, that greatly reduces the suicide risk and the mental health issues to come. So I also want to share, not directly, but our work aligns with Dr. Caitlin Ryan's research. She's a researcher out in California, and her family acceptance project models are recognized by the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention as a best practice for suicide prevention. Okay. And at the very bottom of this screen, you can access the posters that she has for free. You just have to go to the website, answer a few questions, like put in your email, and then in multiple languages, English, Spanish, Arabic, Chinese, she has these posters, which I'm going to show you a preview of. So through her research, she found that family behaviors that increase your child's health and well-being when it's gender and orientation diverse children. So I'll read a couple of these to you. Tell your child that you love them. See, number one, even if there's disagreement, even if there's fear, even if there's rejection, if there is love, that's love makes a family, that makes it all work. Ask your child if and how you can help them tell other people in the family about their identity. Support your child's gender expression. Welcome your child's friends to your home. Talk with your child or foster child about their identity and listen respectfully. Require other family members to treat your child with respect. Show affection when your child tells you or you learn that your child might be gender or orientation diverse, okay? So there are a whole host of practices that she has identified in the research. And on the very bottom of the poster, the more number of like check boxes that you can check off or you can work with a family to do, we are decreasing the risk of suicide and mental health and increasing the family acceptance process, okay? She also has posters on the risk factors that increase. And basically these posters are like a reverse of the talking points I just showed you. Like prevent your child from having a friend. Don't tell them that you love them. Don't talk about your child's identity, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the more on the reverse poster that they do, that can lead to more harm for the child. Okay? So I'm going to just pause a second. Rodolfo, do we have any chats or comments coming in?
Nothing for now.
Okay, great. So I encourage you to please ask or share or anything about communication, family functioning. We love this conversation and we love supporting and empowering our families so they can have a more alive, joyful, and related family experience. So we are going to show a video clip, and before we turn that on, I wanted to share a context a little bit about Vilma and Laura. By the way, Vilma and Laura have given full consent. It's very brave and courageous that they allowed us to record this session about their family acceptance journey and also share for educational purposes so that it could benefit other families. So Vilma and Laura were referred to us through a local mental health program that we had going on. That agency found out that Laura was really struggling with her sexual orientation and having the conversations with both her mom and her dad. And so you're seeing them after they've taken our communication courses, and you can see a little bit about what they experienced.
Hi, my name is Vilma Valadares Diaz. I'm originally from New Jersey. I came down to Miami in the mid-90s.
Hi, my name is Laura Diaz. I'm Vilma's daughter. I currently am about to graduate Miami-Dade College with my AA music education. About when I was 18 years old, my mom proceeded to go ahead and ask me if I was gay or not, which I just told her, yes, I am, and she became very emotional after that. I personally didn't tell my father after that. She went ahead and did that for me.
The thing that most prompted me to ask Laura was because of conversations that I had with her dad. He had suspected it more than I did. And also, our oldest daughter, we kind of asked her about it, and she didn't want to say one way or another. So we made the decision, one of us had to talk to her. And it was a very emotional issue because when you have a child, or at least in my opinion, you have hopes and your dreams and you have certain expectations. And that wasn't one of our expectations. So it's kind of a shock, and it took some getting used to the idea and fitting it into what you expect. And shortly after we found out, the Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando took place, and that was very scary for me because all of a sudden I was those parents in that club. And especially when you think they're attacking people for something that's not their fault. So it was a very scary, and all these things were going through our head, you know. Do we tell the family? how we're going to treat them. Being Hispanic, it's something that's not being dealt really well, even within, we're Catholic, and even within the church, that a lot of people are very negative.
When I heard about the Pulse shooting, I was just like devastated because it's just like they're just people at the end of the day. Because I remember they weren't even in Miami. They were actually in Orlando when that happened. I remember. So when I heard about it that morning, it's ironic. I think it happened like
Around your birthday.
yeah. It happened like 2 weeks after my birthday, which is like 2 years ago in 2 weeks or something like that. It's just, and they had just found out and they were so worried. It's just, they're just people at the end of the day. Why? Sometimes it's just so scary to walk outside your house. You don't know who you're gonna end up seeing, but we have to just to live our day the way we want to every single day.
There is also a higher risk of gay and bisexual youth to turn to drugs and alcohol as a way to cope with the emotional stressors of discovering they are now in a socially stigmatized group.
Throughout the time of my parents, about a year later, throughout that entire year, I was involved in substance abuse. I ended up getting caught about almost exactly a year later with the cops, and I was brought home, and then that's when my parents found out I was dealing with substance abuse. And it's just the consequences after that. You have to go to court, even if it was just such a minor offense. I have to go to court, then you have to be put on probation, depending how extensive, how much you had substance on you versus you don't.
Her getting brought home by the police was extremely scary. At that point, we did try to get services and help. There wasn't only the substance abuse going on, she also has an educational diagnosis, plus her being gay. We got very negative vibes. People were like, she won't fit in the groups, we can't handle. And that's how we got to the Yes Center. And coming here that day was a tremendous relief. Just the fact that the people who we met with that day were so willing to listen and offered what help they could, but the fact that they welcomed us and didn't judge made a world of difference.
All right. So I'm going to allow everyone some time to just process the sharing that Vilma and Laura gave us. And if you have any reflections or comments about what you listened to, we're happy to engage. And there's a chat. I see my daughter started expressing her gender fluidity as young as 2. She was now 9 and continues to go by she, her. She was born male, but always very feminine. And thankfully, my husband and I have always been supportive. I live in Arizona, and fingers always get pointed at me and not my husband. And it can sometimes get to me mentally. We have changed her name legally to the name she goes by, and I get judged a lot as her mom. Thank you for sharing about that. And, as Jennifer mentioned, it can be very challenging for our families right now. There's, increased hostility and sentiment that's kind of negative out there. So to you, I just want to say thank you for being a great mom and dad and keeping your kid alive. And that's why we're here in community and partnership with Equality Florida and Brazelton and Yes Institute and many other groups that want to hold space, support you, provide you resources and care. And as you can see in our work at Yes Institute, it's not just the youth, it's also the whole family who needs support. So we offer a variety of workshops like therapist referrals. Rodolfo and I also teach a well-being and resiliency workshop, just practices that we can do to keep our own mental health thriving and alive. and we all need support. So please, if you need extra support, please reach out to any of the folks here on the call. There is wonderful people that just want to support and help you be great parents for your children.
Joseph,
Yes.
there was a comment in the chat from Robin that said, I am thinking about how these tips could also apply for conversations about politics and in other relationships beyond parent and child.
Yes. So a lot of people, so by the way, our communication solutions course and communication toolbox, which we offer on Zoom, we do for a variety of audiences. I've even been invited into corporate workplaces to support them who are not like directly working on, gender and orientation topics, to just help with like teamwork management. So we're happy if you want to follow up with us later. I've presented to insurance companies, banking industry, the IT industry. Being at work, you'll hear us say like, I have my work family or my work wife or husband, and that's also a relationship. And we are really interested in all types of communication on all kinds of topics where there's disagreements can benefit from learning a little bit about the tools. I just showed you one, which is about the ability to listen even when we disagree. There's more tools. Our communication toolbox is about 5 hours to do it on Zoom. And then we also offer full 1-day and 2-day courses. We've also worked with, by the way, my mom's a teacher, and we've also worked with many schools because a very stressful job where there's a lot of disagreement is in the schools. And that's if it's a public, private, independent, or even homeschool community. We are very passionate about adapting our framework, and we've seen it work in many, many audiences. When I did the training for the insurance company, they still reach out to me, and this was like 4 years ago, and they still tell me like, we still use those tools every day. Our teamwork is like improved immensely. So if you see benefit beyond your family and within your family, know that we're here to help you support in that regard as well. Okay.
And also, Joanne and Lisa were asking about the best practices for parents from the study that you mentioned. And I would like to highlight that you share the link by the chat so they can access the study and check the practices in detail.
Yes, and I'm dropping that link in the chat one more time here so it's fresh for everyone and you don't have to scroll back too far. And we very much are aligned with Caitlin Ryan's research. And also we feel like we give additional tools that then can help you with the best practices that Caitlin Ryan offers with Family Acceptance Project. So I have one more testimonial to share and a book reference for you all. So let me get the screen going again. So I'd like to introduce you to Isabel. Isabel is an amazing mom. She is Haitian American. She was a teacher in our local schools for, my gosh, 30, 40 years. And when she retired, she had the time to write a memoir. And it's a very beautiful story. And we met Isabel and her child, Sky, at the Baker Act Receiving Facility. We had done a presentation for a graduate counseling class just 2 weeks prior. And one of the students in the class was interning at a Baker Act Receiving Facility for adolescents. And, she checked with her supervisor and said, I really think Yes Institute might be helpful with this particular case. Because Sky was coming out as a man. He was coming out as a transgender young man. And Isabel had no frame of reference. She was really confused. She thought, aren't you maybe just a lesbian? If you're a lesbian, that's okay. We have another lesbian in our family. And Sky was like, no, I'm a guy. And I got the feeling like that you all wouldn't accept it because that's like too big of a leap for you and our family. They're also very, deeply religious family and from the Haitian American community. And we worked with Isabel and Sky and her whole family for many, many years. And you'll hear from this video clip, she now is a public advocate to support other families who are dealing with transgender as well as gay and lesbian youth and adults coming out. and she's written a beautiful book. So it's called Soleil's Mom. It's available on Amazon and other places you can purchase on the internet. And we'll listen to a quick video clip of her where she's going to go into just another tool that we haven't talked about yet that she found very helpful in her family acceptance process. Okay.
And communication that we had, I believe in that course we had some silent exercises that we did, and that was important. That was important. That was because it shows you how all around, expressing how you feel, how they feel was important. I don't know if I said it right, but that's what I remember, in the exercises that we did. That was very helpful.
Yeah, you said it beautifully. One of the steps that's a big piece of the course is that you can still listen even though you don't agree. Because in a lot of families, as soon as the youth or the parent doesn't agree on something, everything shuts down. Maybe you could just share an insight around that and maybe an example of how it helped you and your family.
So in terms of, even if you don't agree, that was my response. Though I didn't agree with the way, in the beginning, no, let's try to change her around and make her realize, no, you're at fault. This is not correct. And I kept on listening. I kept on listening. I kept on doing what the steps were and so on. And eventually, slowly, yes, it was, that's the way it should be. Let's listen to what she has to say. And I thought that was very important. And I'm a good student. I did the listening. I did the listening and not fight it. Though in my mind it was going on, but eventually the fight was stopped. And let's listen. Let's listen more. So, being a good student, not a good teacher.
That's beautiful. Okay, Isabel, that's it. I'm gonna stop the recording again. All right. So you got to hear a little bit from Isabel, and I made this recording because she got to go on an international trip to India, so she was not available right now to be with us on this webinar. And um, I saw a question come in the Q&A, and let's explore this question.
Do you want me to read it, Joseph?
I got it. Thank you, Rodolfo. Do you
Okay.
have recommended materials curriculum for parents or teachers to communicate about sex ed with their LGBTQ children? All right. So let me say a couple of things as we address and answer this. So my understanding is it depends on the state that you're in, if we're here in the US. And in Latin America, I don't have a frame of reference of how sex ed is done there. So in our state here in Florida, sex ed is very limited and it's abstinence only, and nothing wrong with that. However, a lot of families feel like, especially when it comes to gender and orientation diverse children, there's not a lot of resources available. On my team, I have a prior sexual health educator that worked in the Chicago area schools, and she joined our institute because when she was doing her program in the Chicago schools, she was shocked at the questions that her middle school and high school students were asking. And since tonight we're talking about communication, the whole topic of sexuality, that's also a very difficult conversation to have between parent and youth for many parents. Um, so, and one of the things that we're doing to address this is I've applied to an internal research grant with one of our local universities, and fingers crossed, it looks like it's going to get accepted, and we've started the IRB review process. We're going to launch focus groups just for parents and anybody 18 and above about asking this very question. If there were to be a comprehensive sexual health education curriculum, what would that need to look like? We're also interviewing people from our neurodiverse community because we're also trying to do some research on then how do we do that with that, intersecting identity as a part of the conversation. I also know that there are resources online and books available. I don't know them off the top of my head, but I wanted to share that this is a question that we're looking at deeply at the S Institute, and we're about to get into a research study to investigate this ourselves. And part of the research is to make public domain, publicly available, like video clips and animation that also reduce stigma and shame, make the conversations a little bit easier to have with parents. Most parents are heterosexual who have gay and lesbian children, and it can be difficult enough for heterosexual parents to talk to their heterosexual kids about, sexual health conversations. And then, there's added layers when parents are not expecting their kids to come out. So I wish I could give you a better answer, but just know that this is an unmet need and gap in our community, and we're taking steps to work on that and also get maybe a paper published so we can have, research-informed practices out there. Thank you for that question. Does anybody else have any other comments, questions that you might have? Does anybody have a situation that you're dealing with in your family that we could support you with and give you some ideas about how to address it that's a little bit more purpose-centered versus agenda-based versus right-wrong conversation? I'd love to hear from any of you. You can use the chat, you can use the Q&A feature.
There's another question in the Q&A, which is, are there certain resources on the website that you would especially recommend be used by childcare professionals in their programs and to share with families?
So, for this person, I'm just not, Carmela, PFLAG has many published resources for parents and allies. Thank you. Another resource, and you can connect with us maybe offline. Rodolfo, could you drop our email address in the chat? So many years ago, Yes Institute actually got accreditation with our local early learning certification group who manages the certification and CE training for all childcare professionals in our whole county. However, back in 2022, there was state legislation that outlawed that training, and so we no longer can do that work. If you want to email us in other states that might not have those restrictions, I'm happy to share with you CE accredited materials, content, lessons that we had created that in Florida right now is kind of just sitting on the shelf. And I'd love to share that with other people in other states that might be able to access those materials. They met all the CE requirements, and you can absolutely send us an email, and we're happy to set up a meeting and get those shared with you on a Google Drive. How do teachers support kids in states in Florida? Yes, where pronouns, gender identity, sexual orientation are being legally limited. So I know Jennifer in the subsequent webinars that are going to continue. Remember, this is just one of 4, is going to give you lots of resources. So, there's a couple of things that I do want to mention, and we're happy to discuss more offline. So at least here in our state, gay straight alliances, also known as GSAs, they haven't been banned. So that is one way that you can have a GSA club or a, human diversity club. A lot of schools have gotten creative with the naming. And so that is still something that can happen. At least it's in the school community. Also, since in our state, there are now restrictions about what we can and can't do in the schools, we still do faculty training, school counselor and school psychologist training, and we can also work directly with the PTA or PTSA because there's no state laws that I'm familiar with that don't allow you to talk to the parents after school hours. So we have pivoted and we are doing much more of those. And actually, it's really great because the parents and the adults are sometimes that really want the support, the education, and the knowledge. The kids are, at least this generation of young children mostly are growing up where gay and transgender students are all around them, and it's just a reality for them. So that's another strategy for the person who asked the Florida question. And we're also happy to connect with you offline and support you with other ways that you can still empower your school community, even though it may just not be able to be done in the classroom during instructional time. Another one of our schools has found a way to invite nonprofit organizations during the students' lunch break. The students' lunch break is not curriculum. They're eating lunch. And sometimes we get invited to set up a resource table. We screen the materials that we're presenting, but all of our materials say you need to check with your parents and have parental consent to participate in this paid research study, access counseling, but at least students know and get to see something in the school premises. So that's another way that we are not in violation of the law and we can show support and just let students know outside of the school community, there's lots of things available for you and your family.
Joseph, we have 4 questions. So
okay, they all came in here. All right.
I'll go with the first one. How would you handle a parent that says to their trans child, let's just agree to disagree about this? The youth has severely limited communication with their parent because of this.
Yeah, that's a tough one. So I might, if that youth was, asking that, I might say a couple of things. I might say, right now, regarding this matter, you're the parent and you're the adult in the relationship because you're ready to talk about something that your parent isn't. And just like we taught, that youth can say to the parent, hey, look, I get that you want to agree to disagree and not just discuss this. And whenever you are ready to have the conversation, just know I'm here, ready and able to have it, because at some point I would like to discuss it. And I get right now for you, this is very uncomfortable. So let's just take a pause on that for now and know that maybe we can check on it later on. Something like that, right? So the youth has agency in the conversation and doesn't have to stay with the shutdown, but can also honor where that parent is right now because that is their parent and that's where they're at. And nobody can change that right now. Okay?
Another question. Is there resources, improved communication tools for parents who are not affirming perspective, conservative faith parents, since they will not into using affirming materials guidelines?
Yeah, so again, this is probably something that we would love to be helpful and supportive with, but we may have to do this offline. But just for everyone and for you, I'm going to give you the gist of it. So through our work at Yes Institute, we work with a variety of religious communities, Methodist, Baptist, Lutheran, Jewish, and the gamut of very liberal and progressive to very, very conservative. And we work with all of them successfully. Sometimes in the particular religious denomination, there are ministers that are available to do ministerial counseling that can really honor that family's background and also really thread the needle in a very kind and gentle way of getting the family to maybe not affirm, but at least so that there's not mental health and suicide risk and at least dialogue and conversation. And we're also happy to connect you because we work with many, many different denominations. However, it does require a very customized and nuanced approach and finding the right religious minister that's available to intervene with that family, okay? But we've done this for many families very successfully.
Another question. I know this varies by state, but are you able to explain the idea of informed consent with taking HRT medication? I have an adult child in my state, and is it not required for a person to have a psychological evaluation sessions prior to deciding to take HRT? It concerns me because my child had never shown any interest in being a different gender and recently disclosed this decision to me. I think it would be worth at least exploring with a mental health clinician before making such a permanent decision.
Yes. So, Jennifer, I'm going to toss this one to you. And whoever asked that question, please email us because we or Jennifer would love to support you. Laws do vary state by state, and there are guidelines, and I don't want to just say something here on the webinar and mislead you. So let's connect. We do want to support you, but we're going to have to ask a few questions so we can find out your contacts and guide you appropriately.
There was one additional question. Do we have time or?
Let's go for it.
Oh yeah,
very quickly because we're almost at time.
Okay, yeah, thank you. How to treat a lesbian woman so she does not feel guilty? That's the other question.
Okay, I need to know more context. I can't. So again, please follow up with us, and because we are also almost out of time. Yeah, please send us an email. And by the way, anybody can schedule a no-cost consultation session with us or even a Zoom meeting, whatever works best for you. Jennifer in Equality Florida and all her resources are also available, so we will connect offline. Thank you all. I'm sorry we ran out of time. Just very briefly, how could you take one of our communication sessions? And I know most of you are not local to South Florida on the call. So we have 2 upcoming opportunities. The Essentials of Gender and Orientation is a really great course especially for parents that are just finding out or have recently found out their kid is coming out. And it's a very basic, very gentle, it's mostly other parents and extended family members there. And this is really great to kind of just help them wrap the idea and ask questions in a very psychologically safe space. Our communication toolbox, if you liked what I presented and you want these tools for yourself, for your family, for your workplace, please come check out our communication toolbox course. It's a 4-hour session in July, so you got a couple of months. And the registration fee is I think it's like $30. It's not too difficult or cost prohibitive to participate. And you can also connect with us at any time about anything if we can be helpful to you, your family, or your loved ones. Back to you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Joseph. And thank you for this very real and honest look at how to communicate when it's difficult. Those questions were great. And I want folks to know that we will have psychologists our next webinar on so that we can continue this conversation. And please feel free to reach out, but we hope to see you at our next one because we will be continuing this conversation and get deeper into the subject. So I want to thank everyone for their participation. Remind you that you will be receiving an email later this week or early next week with links to a recording of today's conversation. You also will be getting a resource handout, and it will have a link to the book that you learned about, to those posters with the different languages, and also some actual tools for you to use. So keep an eye out for that. And there also will be a link to a feedback survey. We would really appreciate you completing the survey so we can learn on how to improve our programming. So in 2 weeks, we will have our next conversation in this series. It will be on May 20th, and our conversation will focus on pride in our well-being. We're supporting our LGBTQ2IA, that's a mouthful, plus parents and caregivers amid systemic stress. We have invited a panel of mental health experts to talk about the mental and emotional well-being of parents and caregivers. Supporting our children amid the social, cultural, and systemic pressures can affect our mental health in meaningful ways, especially across intersecting identities such as race, ethnicity, I can't even talk, it's late, disability, immigration status, and faith, but all those same identities can be powerful sources of strength and meaning and protection. So we hope that you will join us. You can scan the QR code on the slide to learn more. If you registered originally for all 4, you are already registered for our next one. We hope to see you. We also want to let you know that there is another Brazelton Touchpoints Center free webinar, and that's on Wednesday, May 27th at 3 p.m. And I want to thank you again for joining us. We hope to see you next time and appreciate you all taking your time to be here with us. Take care and thank you.